The signal came through on a frequency that most species had abandoned centuries ago. It was old technology, the kind used when someone had nothing left but desperation. The Velakir were dying, and they wanted someone, anyone, to know. Commander Yelthar of the Galactic Council listened to the transmission for the third time. His 4 eyes closed in what his species considered deep sorrow. The message was simple and heartbreaking. Cities burning. Children screaming. The Krenth Dominion had come to their world not to conquer but to erase. "We have families," the Velakir broadcaster said, her voice breaking. "We have done nothing to deserve this, please. Anyone, help us." Yelthar brought the message to the council chambers, a massive room where representatives from 47 species gathered to discuss galactic affairs. The room fell silent as the transmission played. When it ended, nobody spoke for a long moment. "We must act," said Ambassador Threen, her tentacles curling with emotion. "The Velakir are innocent. They have no military. They are traitors and artists." "Act how?" replied Councillor Vex, his scales rippling with irritation. "The Krenth have 600 warships in that system. We would need to commit our entire defense fleet. The casualties would be enormous, and so we do nothing?" Threen's voice rose. "We sit here in our comfortable chambers while an entire species is slaughtered?" Yelthar raised his hand for silence. "We are not saying we do nothing. We are saying we must be realistic. The Krenth Dominion is powerful. A military intervention could start a war that spreads across 10 systems. Millions could die instead of thousands. The Velakir number in the billions," Threen said quietly. "Had numbered," Vex corrected. "The intelligence reports say half their population is already gone. We would be sending our people to die for a species that may not survive anyway." The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted to help. Others worried about the cost. A few suggested sending a strongly worded diplomatic message to the Krenth, though everyone knew it would be ignored. In the end, they voted. 32 species voted against military intervention. 15 voted for it. The Velakir would not be saved. Yelthar returned to his quarters that night feeling older than his 200 years. He had seen the council fail before, but never like this. Never so completely. He poured himself a drink and stared at the stars through his window. Somewhere out there, people were dying while he did nothing. The humans heard the signal by accident. The human listening post on the edge of their small territory was not supposed to be monitoring Galactic Council frequencies. But Lieutenant Sarah Chen was bored, and bored communication officers often bent the rules. She was scanning through old channels when she caught the tail end of the Velakir distress call. She listened to it once. Then again. Then she called her commanding officer. Within an hour, the message had reached Earth. Within 6 hours, it was playing in the emergency session of the Human Defense Council. The room was smaller than the Galactic Council chambers, less grand. Humanity was new to space, barely a century old among the stars. They had 12 worlds and a fleet of 70 warships. The other species called them primitives, newcomers, not worth noticing. Admiral Marcus Chen, Sarah's uncle, stood before the Defense Council. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. He had fought in the resource wars on Earth, back when humans killed each other over water and land. He knew what desperation looked like. "The Galactic Council has decided not to intervene," he said. "They claim the cost is too high." "How many Velakir are left?" asked President Kim. "Intelligence estimates between 3 and 4 billion, down from 8 billion 2 weeks ago." Someone in the room swore. President Kim looked around at her advisors. "Can we help them?" "The Krenth have us outgunned 6-1, said Admiral Chen. "Maybe worse. We would be going in against a superior force in unknown territory, with no support. Standard military doctrine says we would lose." "That is not what I asked, Admiral. I asked if we can help them." Admiral Chen smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Yes, Madam President. We can help them. Then prepare the fleet." The vote was not unanimous. Some counselors argued that humanity could not afford to make enemies. Others said they should wait for Galactic Council approval. But the majority voted to act. Within hours, 47 human warships were preparing for departure. It was almost their entire military fleet. If they lost, humanity would be defenseless. The news reached the Galactic Council within a day. Yelthar could not believe what he was hearing. "The humans are doing what?" he asked. "Mobilizing their fleet," his aide repeated. "They are heading to the Velakir system. Estimated arrival in 4 days. Yelthar immediately sent a message to the human ambassador, a stern woman named Rodriguez who always seemed impatient with council procedures. Ambassador, your species must reconsider this action, Yelthar said during their video call. You are new to galactic politics. You do not understand the complexity of the situation. I understand perfectly, Rodriguez replied. People are dying. Someone should help them. Your fleet will be destroyed. The Krenth Dominion is one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Your ships use primitive fusion drives. Your weapons are kinetic and chemical. You will be slaughtered. Maybe. This is not bravery. This is suicide. Rodriguez leaned forward, her eyes hard. Commander Yelthar, let me tell you about humanity. We spent 10,000 years killing each other on one planet. We fought wars over gods, over land, over resources, over ideas. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world, and we came close to using them. We know what war costs. Then why go to war for strangers? Because we also know what it costs not to fight. We know what happens when good people do nothing. We have seen it. We have lived it. And we promised ourselves that when we reached the stars we would be better than we were. Noble words will not stop Krenth warships. No, Rodriguez agreed, but our warships might. We are going, Commander. You can help us or get out of our way. The transmission ended. Yelthar sat in silence for a long time. Then he opened a channel to the Velakir system, though he knew it was probably too late. In the Velakir system, the Krenth continued their work. Admiral Croth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another city burn below. The Velakir had tried to surrender 3 times. He had ignored them each time. The Krenth did not accept surrender until the lesson was complete. Other species needed to learn what happened when you refused to pay tribute to the Dominion. Admiral, we are detecting new signals at the edge of the system, his sensor officer reported. More refugees trying to escape? No, sir, warships, unknown configuration. They are broadcasting a message. Play it. The voice that came through was flat, emotionless, speaking in perfect galactic standard. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. Krenth forces, you are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. You have 6 hours to begin your departure. This is your only warning, Croth laughed. His crew joined in. Humans, the primitives from the small territory near the galactic rim. He had read the intelligence reports. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were basic. They had brought 47 ships against his 600. Send a response, Croth ordered. Tell them to run home before they get hurt. But even as he said it, he felt a small doubt. There was something in that human voice, something cold and certain. He pushed the feeling away. Numbers did not lie. He had overwhelming superiority. The Krenth continued their bombardment. The humans waited, using their 6 hours to evacuate every Velakir they could reach. They sent shuttles down to burning cities, pulling survivors from rubble, packing them into cargo bays. They worked without stopping, without speaking, with an efficiency that seemed mechanical. When exactly 6 hours had passed, the human fleet moved, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Croth was reviewing casualty reports when his flagship shook. It was not a large impact, but it should not have happened at all. His shields were active, and no Velakir possessed weapons capable of reaching his ship in orbit. Report, he snapped. Multiple impacts across the fleet. Sir, the sensor officer said, his voice rising with confusion. The humans are firing on us. With what? They are still outside effective weapons range. They are launching physical projectiles, sir. Large ones. They are accelerating them to extreme velocities before release. Croth pulled up the tactical display. The human ships were indeed far away, well beyond the range where energy weapons could effectively strike. But they were throwing chunks of metal, accelerating them with their primitive drives, then releasing them to coast through space at incredible speeds. It was crude, wasteful, and surprisingly effective. The projectiles were too small to destroy a ship, but they were damaging shields and forcing his fleet to disperse. Adjust formation. Focus fire on the lead human vessels. Once we eliminate a few, the rest will retreat. The Krenth fleet reoriented, bringing their plasma batteries to bear. They fired, brilliant streams of superheated matter crossing the void. The human ships scattered, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Several took hits. Their shields, as expected, were weak. 2 human destroyers were crippled within the first exchange. See? Croth said to his bridge crew. Primitives playing at war. Then the nuclear warheads detonated. The humans had not fired just kinetic projectiles. Hidden among them were dozens of fusion bombs, each one pushing yields that made the Krenth weapons look gentle. They were crude, wasteful, inefficient. They were also devastating. 3 Krenth cruisers vanished in expanding spheres of plasma. 5 more were crippled, their shields overwhelmed by the raw energy. "Return fire," Croth ordered. "All batteries, continuous barrage." But the humans were not where they had been. They were moving in ways that violated standard fleet tactics, splitting up, refusing to maintain formation. Krenth targeting systems struggled to track individual ships as they wove between debris and used the planet's gravity to slingshot into unexpected vectors. Human frigate emerged from behind the planet's moon, its approach masked until the last moment. It fired a spread of missiles not at Croth's flagship, but at the supply ships hanging in high orbit. The explosions were smaller than the nuclear strikes, but they achieved their purpose. Food, ammunition, and fuel that had been meant to sustain the Krenth fleet for months vanished in seconds. "They are targeting our logistics," the tactical officer said, disbelief in his voice. That is not how fleet combat works." Croth was beginning to understand. These humans did not fight like civilized species. In proper galactic warfare, fleets met in open space, exchanged fire until one side's shields failed, and then negotiations began. Civilians were off limits. Supply lines were protected by mutual agreement. There were rules, conventions developed over thousands of years that the humans were ignoring all of them. Another group of human ships swept past a Krenth troop transport that was preparing to land more soldiers on the Velakir homeworld. Instead of engaging the military escorts, the humans fired on the transport itself. It was full of soldiers, yes, but it was not a warship. Destroying it was considered unsportsmanlike. The transport broke apart, spilling atmosphere and bodies into space. "Get me a communication line to the human commander," Croth demanded. It took several minutes, but eventually Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen. He was older than Croth had expected, with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion at all. "You are violating the conventions of civilized warfare," Croth said. "You attack supply ships, troop transports, non-combat vessels. This is not honorable." "You are bombing cities full of civilians," Chen replied. "You do not get to lecture me about honor. Those are different matters. Ground campaigns have different rules than fleet combat." "Is that so?" Chen's expression did not change. "Here is the human rule. You hurt innocent people, we hurt you. Any way we can. As efficiently as we can. Until you stop, you cannot win. We outnumber you 10 to 1. Numbers are not everything." The transmission cut. Croth stared at the blank screen, feeling something he had not experienced in years. Uncertainty. The battle continued for 18 hours. It was unlike anything in Croth's experience. The humans refused to engage in traditional fleet combat. They struck and vanished. They used asteroids for cover, deploying weapons that turned space rocks into fragmentation bombs. They hacked into Krenth communication channels, feeding false orders that sent ships to wrong coordinates. One human captain transmitted a surrender signal, drawing in 3 Krenth destroyers to accept the prize. When the Krenth ships were close, the human vessel detonated its own reactor, destroying itself and damaging all 3 enemy ships. It was insane. It was also effective. The Krenth were stronger, better armed, more numerous. But they were fighting an enemy that seemed to have no concept of proper military conduct. The humans treated war not as a contest between fleets, but as a problem to solve through any means necessary. On the surface of the Velakir homeworld, the civilian population watched the sky light up with explosions. They had been watching their cities burn for weeks. Now they watched something different, someone fighting back. Talara was a Velakir teacher who had spent the last 2 weeks hiding in the ruins of her school with 8 children. Their parents were dead or missing. Food was almost gone. Hope had died days ago. She had been teaching the children their history, their poetry, their songs, trying to give them something beautiful before the end came. Then the humans arrived. The shuttles came down through fire and smoke, landing in the rubble. Human soldiers poured out, wearing armor that looked heavy and crude compared to Krenth equipment. They moved quickly, efficiently, clearing buildings and gathering survivors. One soldier, a woman with dark skin and tired eyes, found Talara and the children. "Come with me," she said in badly accented Velakir. "We are getting you out." "Where?" Talara asked. The Krenth are everywhere. Not for much longer, the soldier replied. They ran to the shuttle through streets that had been Talara's neighborhood. She had taught in this district for 20 years. She knew every building, every park. Now it was all ruins and bodies. The children were crying, clinging to her and to the human soldiers who carried the smallest ones. As the shuttle lifted off, Talara looked down at her burning world. In orbit, she could see the flashes of combat. The Krenth fleet was still larger, still powerful, but something had changed. They were no longer attacking the surface. They were defending themselves. Inside the human flagship, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with cold calculation. His fleet had started with 47 ships. He was down to 39. 2 were destroyed, 6 too damaged to continue fighting. The Krenth had lost 60 ships, mostly support vessels and transports. In a pure numbers game, Kroth was still winning, but Chen was not playing a numbers game. Status on civilian evacuation? He asked. 73,000 Velikir recovered and in holding areas, his XO reported. We estimate another 100,000 in accessible zones. The rest are either dead or behind Krenth lines. Continue evacuation operations. Deploy the packages. Sir, the packages are not tested. They might not work. They will work. The packages were human innovation at its finest. Small satellites equipped with nothing but cameras, transmitters, and basic thrusters. They deployed throughout the system, focusing on Krenth vessels. They did not attack, did not threaten. They just watched and transmitted. Every Krenth ship movement, every formation change, every tactical decision was now visible to the human fleet in real time. The humans had turned the entire battlefield into a surveillance network. Kroth realized what was happening when his attempted ambush failed. He had sent a squadron to flank the human position, maintaining communication silence to preserve surprise. The humans had detected them anyway and repositioned before the attack could develop. They are watching us, his tactical officer said. They have sensors throughout the system. Then destroy the sensors. Sir, there are thousands of them. They are small, numerous, and individually worthless. Destroying them would waste ammunition we need for actual combat. Kroth felt rage building. These humans fought like scavengers, like vermin. They had no pride, no sense of proper combat. They used tricks and deception instead of honest strength, but they were winning. Send a message to the Dominion, Kroth ordered. Request reinforcements. Tell them the humans are more dangerous than intelligence suggested. The message was transmitted. The response came back within hours. The Dominion was sending 300 more ships. They would arrive in 6 days. When Admiral Chen received this intelligence, his expression finally changed. He smiled, though it was not a happy expression. Good, he said. Let them come. Lieutenant, send a message to Earth. Tell them we need the rest of the fleet. Sir, that will leave Earth defenseless. Earth can take care of itself. These people cannot. The Velikir watched and wondered. They had been saved from immediate death, but they had seen what their saviors were capable of. They had watched human ships sacrifice themselves. They had seen humans use weapons that civilized species had banned centuries ago. The Krenth reinforcements arrived in the Velikir system like an iron fist descending from the stars. 300 warships led by Fleet Commander Drask, a veteran of 20 campaigns. He had fought rebels, pirates, and independent systems. He had never lost. Drask reviewed the reports from Admiral Kroth with growing irritation. 47 human ships caused this much damage? 39 now, Kroth corrected. They fight without honor, Commander. They use deception, suicide tactics, weapons that violate. I do not care about their methods, Drask interrupted. I care about results. You had 600 ships. You should have crushed them in hours. They do not fight like a proper fleet. They scatter, they hide, Enough. You have made excuses. Now I will make examples. Drask's fleet formed into a massive battle formation, a wall of ships designed to sweep through the system and destroy everything in its path. It was overwhelming force applied with brutal simplicity. No human tricks could stand against raw power. The human fleet was waiting near the 4th planet, a gas giant with 17 moons. Drask could see them on his sensors, 39 ships holding position. Finally, they would face him properly. All ships advance, Drask commanded. Maintain formation. Fire on my mark. The Krenth fleet moved forward like a tidal wave. The humans held their ground. Drask smiled. Perhaps they were learning respect for superior numbers. Then the human ships scattered in every direction. They did not retreat. They did not flee. They broke into groups of 3 or 4 vessels and accelerated toward different moons, different vectors, different destinations. Within minutes, the concentrated human fleet had become a dozen small packs spread across millions of kilometers. "Pursue them," Drask ordered. "All squadrons break formation and engage." It was a mistake, and he realized it too late. The human groups were too small to destroy quickly, but large enough to be dangerous. Each pack would engage a pursuing Krenth squadron for a few minutes, inflict damage, then retreat into the cover of a moon or asteroid field. The Krenth would follow, and another human pack would strike from a different angle. Within hours, Drask's massive fleet was spread across the entire system, chasing enemies who refused to be caught. The humans knew the terrain now, had mapped every moon and asteroid during the weeks they had been fighting. They used the environment like a weapon. One human group drew a Krenth squadron into the rings of the gas giant. The humans flew through the debris field at reckless speed, their smaller ships able to dodge where Krenth cruisers could not. 2 Krenth ships collided with ring material and were disabled. The humans circled back and destroyed them at leisure. Another group used fake distress signals, broadcasting that their engines were damaged. When Krenth ships approached to capture what they thought was a crippled vessel, they found themselves in a trap. Human ships had hidden in the shadow of a nearby moon, their reactors shut down to avoid detection. They powered up and attacked from behind, destroying 3 ships before the Krenth could respond. Drask watched his organized battle plan dissolve into chaos. "All ships regroup at the rally point. We will consolidate and destroy them properly." But the humans did not let him regroup. Every time Krenth ships tried to gather, a human pack would strike, forcing them to defend or pursue. It was infuriating. It was impossible to bring superior numbers to bear when the enemy refused to stand and fight. On the 5th day after Drask's arrival, his fleet had lost 47 ships. The humans had lost 9. The mathematics were wrong. This should not be possible. "Capture a human ship," Drask ordered. "I want to interrogate their commander, learn their tactics." His crews managed to corner a damaged human destroyer near the system's asteroid belt. The ship was leaking atmosphere and had lost engine power. Marines boarded it, expecting to find a crew ready to surrender. Instead, they found bodies and explosives. The human crew had set their ship to self-destruct, then fled in escape pods that were already gone. The Krenth Marines barely had time to evacuate before the destroyer detonated, taking a Krenth boarding ship with it. But they did manage to capture 1 escape pod. Inside was a single human, a young officer named Lieutenant James Park. He had stayed behind to ensure the self-destruct worked, and his pod had malfunctioned. Now he sat in a Krenth detention cell, hands bound, facing Commander Drask. "Why do you fight this way?" Drask asked. "Without honor, without dignity?" Park looked up at him. His face was bruised from the capture, but his eyes were clear. "Honor does not protect the Velakir. Dignity does not stop your bombardments. We are warriors. We fight as warriors have fought for millennia. With strength, with courage, meeting our enemies face to face. You bomb cities from orbit," Park said flatly. "That is not courage. That is cowardice with better weapons." Drask felt his crest rise in anger. "Watch your words, human. I could have you executed. Then do it. 1 more dead human will not change what is happening. You are losing. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior—" "You have rules," Park interrupted. "We have results. You think war is a game with winners and losers. We know war is about survival. The side that survives wins. Everything else is decoration." Drask stared at this young human who showed no fear, no respect, only cold certainty. "What makes you so sure you will survive?" "Because we have fought ourselves for 10,000 years, Park said. "We have used every dirty trick, every brutal tactic, every method you think is dishonorable. We did it to each other, species to species, nation to nation, tribe to tribe. We know every way there is to kill, and we learned something important." "What is that?" "That the species willing to do anything to survive will always defeat the species limited by honor." Park leaned forward. "You follow rules because you think it makes you civilized. We break rules because we know it makes us effective. You cannot win this fight because you are not willing to do what it takes. We will crush you with numbers." Park smiled. It was not a nice smile. "You are welcome to try. We have already sent word to Earth. The rest of our fleet is coming. More ships, more weapons, more humans who are very, very angry about what you did to the Velakir." Drask left the cell feeling disturbed. He had fought many enemies, but never one that seemed to embrace brutality so completely. The humans were not stronger or smarter or more advanced. They were simply willing to go further, to cross lines that other species considered sacred. That night, one of Drask's supply convoys was destroyed. The humans had not attacked it with warships. They had used drones, small automated vessels packed with explosives. They were cheap, easily replaceable, and devastatingly effective. The convoy escorts had ignored them at first, thinking they were too small to be threats. By the time they realized the truth, it was too late. Drask called his senior officers together. "We need to change tactics. The humans are not fighting a fleet battle. They are fighting a war of attrition. Then we should withdraw," one admiral suggested. "Preserve our forces, return with overwhelming power, and admit defeat to primitives?" Another officer protested. The humiliation would destroy the Dominion's reputation. Drask considered the options. Pride said stay and fight. Wisdom said retreat and regroup. He had always chosen pride before. It had always worked before. "We stay," he decided. "But we adapt. No more chasing them. We protect our supply lines, maintain formation, force them to come to us." It was a good plan. It might have worked if the humans had been fighting a conventional war. Instead, the humans stopped attacking the fleet entirely. For 3 days, Drask saw no human ships. His sensors detected nothing. It was as if they had vanished. His officers were relieved, thinking the humans had retreated. Drask knew better. The humans were planning something. The attack came from a direction no one expected, the Krenth homeworld. A small human strike force, just 6 ships, had broken away from the main fleet weeks earlier. They had traveled through hyperspace on a long, circuitous route that avoided all sensors. They had arrived at the Krenth homeworld, the heart of the Dominion, and they were broadcasting a message. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet," the transmission said. "Krenth citizens, your government has committed atrocities against innocent people. They have ignored calls for peace. They have refused to negotiate. So we are giving you a choice. Force your leaders to withdraw from the Velakir system, or we will begin targeting your infrastructure. You have 24 hours. The Krenth government was in panic. 6 human ships could not conquer their homeworld, but they could cause enormous damage. The planet's orbital defenses were strong but not perfect. If those ships started dropping asteroids, started hitting cities with kinetic strikes, millions could die. It is a bluff." The High Chancellor insisted. They would not dare. But Drask, watching from the Velakir system, knew it was not a bluff. The humans had already shown they would do anything to win. They had already crossed every line. Why would they stop now? He sent a message to his government. "Negotiate. Give them what they want. These humans are not like other species. They will do what they threaten." The response came back swift and harsh. "You have failed, Drask. Deal with the humans in the Velakir system or face trial for incompetence. The Dominion does not negotiate with terrorists in orbit around the Krenth homeworld." Commander Sarah Chen waited. She had hoped they would see reason. The peace talks were supposed to happen on neutral ground. The Galactic Council offered their chambers, eager to mediate and restore some sense of order to a conflict that had spiraled beyond their control. But Admiral Marcus Chen refused. "We will meet on the Velakir homeworld," he transmitted. "In the ruins you created. You will see what you have done." The Krenth delegation arrived on a burnt world. Their shuttle descended through smoke that still rose from burning cities. Below them, they could see the scars of orbital bombardment. Massive craters, collapsed buildings, entire districts reduced to ash. This was their work. The meeting took place in what had been a university. Half the building was collapsed, but one lecture hall remained mostly intact. Velakir survivors watched from the shadows as Krenth officers walked through the rubble. Some Velakir wept. Others stared with empty eyes. A few shouted curses that the Krenth pretended not to hear. Drask led the Krenth delegation. He had expected to meet with Admiral Chen alone. Instead, he found himself facing humans, Velakir civilians, and observers from a dozen Galactic Council species who had come to witness the negotiations. Chen sat at a table made from broken furniture, surrounded by the evidence of Krenth brutality. He did not stand when Drask entered. He did not offer any greeting. He simply waited. "We are here to discuss terms," Drask began. "The Krenth Dominion is willing to—" "You are here to surrender," Chen interrupted. "Let us be clear about that. This is not a negotiation between equals. You lost." Drask's crest rose in anger. We have not lost. We still have superior numbers, superior. You have 6 ships in orbit around your homeworld and about 500 scattered across the galaxy, Chen said. We have the rest of the human fleet arriving in this system within 2 days, and we have your homeworld in our sights. You lost. The room was silent. Drask looked around at the faces watching him. Council observers trying to remain neutral, Velakir survivors radiating hatred, human soldiers standing ready. He had come here expecting to negotiate a dignified withdrawal, a peace with honor. He was beginning to understand that honor was not on the table. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Chen pulled out a datapad. Total withdrawal from the Velakir system. Reparations to the Velakir people. Resources, technology, and labor to rebuild what you destroyed. War crimes trials for every officer who ordered or participated in attacks on civilian targets. And you will surrender your advanced weapons technology to ensure you cannot do this to anyone else. That is not peace, Drask said. That is humiliation. That is justice, Chen replied. You wanted to exterminate an entire species because they refused to pay you tribute. You do not get peace with honor after that. You get peace with accountability. The Dominion will never agree to these terms. Then we will force them. Chen leaned forward. Commander, I want you to understand something. We did not come here for glory. We did not come here for territory or resources. We came because someone needed help and nobody else would give it. Now we are going to make sure this never happens again. By destroying us, if necessary. A Galactic Council observer, Ambassador Threen, stood up. Admiral Chen, surely there must be room for compromise. The Council can mediate a more balanced agreement. Where was the Council when the Velakir were dying? Chen asked. Where was your mediation then? We made a difficult strategic decision. You abandoned them, Chen said flatly. You let millions die because saving them was inconvenient. So no, Ambassador, the Council will not mediate this. You lost that right when you chose comfort over conscience. Threen sat down, her tentacles curling in distress. Around the room, other Council observers looked uncomfortable. They had all voted against intervention. They had all decided that the Velakir were not worth the cost. Now they were watching humanity extract a price they had been unwilling to pay. Talara, the Velakir teacher, stood up. She had been invited to speak for the survivors. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. I had 83 students at my school, she said. I have 8 now. The rest are dead, burned alive when you destroyed our cities. My husband was a doctor. He died trying to help the wounded when you bombed the hospital. My parents, my sisters, my friends, all gone. She walked closer to Drask, and human soldiers tensed but did not stop her. You say these terms are humiliation? Talara continued. You want to know what humiliation is? It is watching your world burn, and knowing that the galaxy considers you not worth saving. It is holding dying children and having no medicine, because you destroyed our infrastructure. It is living in ruins while the powerful species in the galaxy debate whether your life has value. We were following orders, Drask said. We are soldiers. Then the ones who gave those orders will face trial, Chen said. Along with the ones who carried them out. Starting with you. Drask looked at the human admiral with something close to hatred. You speak of justice, but you are no better than us. You used weapons that civilized species banned. You attacked supply ships, used suicide tactics, struck at our homeworld. You broke every rule of warfare. Yes, Chen agreed. We did. And I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. But the Velakir are alive because we were willing to break those rules. You would have exterminated them while following every convention perfectly. So tell me, Commander, which is worse? Breaking rules or letting genocide happen because you followed them? The question hung in the air. Drask had no answer. The negotiations continued for hours. The Krenth tried to bargain, to reduce the terms to preserve something of their dignity. Chen was immovable. Every time they pushed back, he reminded them what was at stake. Their homeworld, their species, their future. The humans had shown they were willing to go further than anyone expected. The Krenth had no choice but to believe they would go all the way. Finally, as the sun set on the ruined city, Drask signed the surrender document. His hand shook as he made his mark. Around him, his officers stood in silence, their crests lowered in defeat. The trials will begin in 1 month, Chen said. Our legal experts and the Velakir people will determine who faces justice and what that justice looks like. Will you face trial too? Drask asked bitterly. For your war crimes? Chen met his gaze. If the Velakir want to put me on trial, I will stand before them and accept their judgment. I did what I did to save them. If they think I went too far, I will answer for it. It was not the answer Drask expected. He looked at this human who had defeated him, who had broken every rule and still claimed to be fighting for justice. There was no glory in Chen's eyes, no triumph. Only tired certainty. That night, Chen walked through the refugee camps where Velakir survivors were living. Human soldiers had set up shelters, medical stations, and food distribution centers. It was basic, crude even, but it was more than the Galactic Council had offered. A Velakir child approached him, holding a flower she had found growing in the ruins. She offered it to him without speaking. Chen took it and felt something break inside him. All the decisions he had made, all the lines he had crossed came crashing down. He had saved these people. He had also become something he had never wanted to be. Lieutenant Sarah Chen found him an hour later, sitting alone in the dark. She was his niece, had followed him into military service, had learned from him. Now she sat beside him in silence. "Did we do the right thing?" Chen asked. "We saved billions of lives," Sarah replied, "by threatening to kill billions of others, by using weapons we swore we would never use again, by becoming the very thing we fought against in our own history. We are not the Krenth." We stopped. "We gave them a choice, did we?" Chen looked at her. "We put a gun to their homeworld's head and said, 'Surrender or die.' That is not a choice. That is a threat. It is a threat they understood. It is the only language they would hear." Chen nodded slowly. "I know, that is what frightens me. That we were so good at it, that it came so naturally." They sat in silence for a while. Around them, the refugee camp hummed with quiet activity. Velakir families trying to sleep. Human medics working through the night. Somewhere a child was crying. "The Council is calling for us to stand down," Sarah said. "They say we are becoming a threat to galactic stability." "They are right to be afraid," Chen replied. "We just proved that a relatively small force can challenge established powers if they are willing to go far enough. We broke the galactic order. What happens now? Now we face the consequences. The Krenth will face justice for what they did, and we will face judgment for how we delivered that justice. The galaxy will decide what kind of species we are." The trial of Krenth officers began 4 weeks later. The Galactic Council wanted to oversee it, but the Velakir refused. This was their justice for their dead. They allowed council observers, but the Velakir people would decide guilt and punishment. The trials were broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had ignored the Velakir distress call now watched as the victims confronted their torturers. It was uncomfortable viewing. The Krenth officers tried to defend their actions. They were following orders, they were soldiers. They believed they were securing their empire's future. The Velakir prosecutors showed evidence of the bombing campaigns, the deliberate targeting of schools and hospitals, the refusal to accept surrender. They called survivors to testify about the horrors they had witnessed. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so full. Representatives from 73 species crowded into the hall, with thousands more watching through holographic feeds. At the center of it all stood Admiral Marcus Chen, alone and unarmed, facing the judgment of the galaxy. Commander Yelthar called the session to order. His 4 eyes looked tired. He had watched the war unfold from a distance, watched humanity do what the Council had refused to do. Now he had to decide what that meant for the future. "Admiral Chen," Yelthar began, "you stand before this Council to answer for actions taken during the Velakir crisis. Multiple species have filed formal complaints against humanity. You are accused of violating the conventions of civilized warfare, threatening civilian populations, using banned weapons, and destabilizing galactic order." "I understand," Chen said. His voice was calm, steady. "Before we hear testimony, do you wish to make a statement?" Chen looked around the chamber. He saw fear in some faces, admiration in others, calculation in most. They were trying to figure out what humanity was, what it meant for their careful balance of power. "I do," he said. "But first I have a question for this council. When the Velakir sent their distress call, how many of you voted to help them?" Silence fell across the chamber. 15 delegates raised their hands, 15 out of 73. "And how many of you voted against intervention?" Slowly, painfully, 32 hands rose. "The rest of you abstained," Chen said. "You could not decide if saving an entire species was worth the inconvenience. So let me tell you what humanity decided. We decided that when someone is dying and asks for help, you help them. The cost does not matter. The rules do not matter. You help them. The cost always matters, Counselor Vex interrupted. War is not simple. You cannot just— You are right, Chen said. War is not simple. It is terrible and brutal, and it scars everyone it touches. I have fought in wars. I have killed people. I have ordered good soldiers to die for objectives that seemed important at the time. I know what war costs. He paused, gathering his words carefully. But I also know what it costs not to fight. I know what happens when good people decide that evil is someone else's problem. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. We had a period in our history where powerful nations stood by while weaker ones were slaughtered. Millions died while people who could have helped debated whether intervention was legally justified, whether it was worth the cost, whether it was really their responsibility. We learned that when you have the power to stop evil and you choose not to, you become part of that evil. So when we heard the Velakir calling for help, we did not debate. We did not form committees. We did not calculate the cost. We responded. Ambassador Threen rose, her tentacles agitated. Noble words, Admiral, but you did more than respond. You threatened an entire homeworld with destruction. You used nuclear weapons, kinetic bombardment, suicide tactics. You violated every convention we have established to keep warfare from becoming total annihilation. Yes, Chen agreed. We did all of that. And I will tell you why. Because the Krenth would not stop. We tried conventional warfare. We tried warnings. We tried everything we could think of to end the conflict quickly with minimal casualties. Nothing worked. So we escalated. To the point of threatening genocide, Vex said. We never intended to commit genocide, Chen replied. But we were willing to make the Krenth believe we would. We were willing to cross that line to threaten the unthinkable, because the alternative was letting the Velakir die. How is that any different from what the Krenth did? Threen demanded. They justified their actions by saying the Velakir were a threat to their empire. You justified your actions by saying you were saving the Velakir. Both of you decided that the ends justified the means. Chen nodded slowly. You are right. There is a similarity. But there is one critical difference. We stopped. When the Krenth surrendered, when they agreed to our terms, we put our weapons away. We did not destroy their homeworld. We did not exterminate their population. We gave them a choice and honored their decision. Because they surrendered before you had to follow through, Vex pointed out. You are asking us to believe you would have stopped, that you would not have become the monsters you were pretending to be. I am not asking you to believe anything, Chen said. I am telling you what we are. Humanity is a species that has seen the worst of itself. We have committed genocides, enslaved each other, nearly destroyed our own world. We know what monsters look like because we have been monsters. The chamber erupted in noise. Some species were outraged at this admission. Others nodded in understanding. Chen waited for silence before continuing. But we also know what it takes to stop being monsters. It takes recognizing what you are capable of, accepting that darkness exists in you and choosing not to let it control you. We made that choice. When the Krenth surrendered, we could have destroyed them anyway. We had the power. Some of my officers wanted to, but we stopped because we are not fighting to be cruel. We are fighting to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Talara stood up in the observers section. May I speak? Yelthar hesitated, then nodded. The Velakir have earned the right to be heard. Talara walked to the center of the chamber, standing beside Chen. She looked small next to the human admiral, her species built lighter and more delicate than humans. But her voice was strong. When the Krenth came to our world, we called for help, she said. We broadcast our distress across every channel we knew. We begged, we pleaded. We offered everything we had. And the galaxy ignored us. She looked around at the assembled delegates. Most of you voted against helping us. You decided our lives were not worth the cost. You let us die because saving us would be difficult. Then the humans came. And yes, they were brutal. They used terrible weapons and terrible tactics. They scared us almost as much as the Krenth did. But they saved us. They lost ships and soldiers saving us. They crossed lines they did not want to cross because it was the only way to stop the killing. Tears were running down her face now. So when this council debates whether the humans are heroes or villains, I have an answer. They are both. They are heroes who were willing to become villains to save us, and I will be grateful to them for the rest of my life. She sat down. The chamber was silent. A delegate from the Peruvian collective stood. They were a species known for careful diplomacy and measured responses. Admiral Chen, you have made your case for why you acted. But you have not addressed the larger question. What happens next? Humanity has shown it is willing to use extreme force when it believes the cause is just. How do we know you will not become the next Krenth? How do we know you will not decide that some other species deserves punishment and bring this same terrible power against them? It was the question Chen had been dreading. The question he had asked himself every night since the war ended. You do not know, he said honestly. We do not know. Humanity is young, impulsive, and carries a lot of anger about the injustices we have seen. We could become exactly what you fear. That is why we need the council. I do not understand, Yelthar said. We need structure, Chen explained. We need accountability. We need someone to tell us when we are going too far. We came to the Velakir system because nobody else would, but that cannot be how the galaxy works. We cannot have individual species deciding on their own when to intervene and how far to go. He pulled out a datapad and projected a document into the center of the chamber. This is a proposal, Chen said. A rapid response force funded by the Council, with clear rules of engagement and oversight. When a species sends a distress call like the Velakir did, this force responds immediately. No debates, no votes, no delays. If innocent people are dying, we act. Who would command this force? Vex asked. A rotating command structure from multiple species, Chen replied. Humanity will contribute ships and personnel, but we will not control it alone. The Council will establish clear rules about what kind of force can be used, what constitutes a just intervention, when to stop. And if humanity disagrees with the Council's rules? Therine asked. Then we debate, we argue, we try to find common ground, Chen said. But we commit to following the rules we agree to. We need the Council to be what it is supposed to be. A force for peace and protection, not just political convenience. Yelthar looked at the proposal, his eyes scanning the details. This would require significant changes to Council structure. It would cost enormous resources. It would put member species at risk. Yes, Chen agreed. It would cost exactly what you were unwilling to pay to save the Velakir. The question is whether you are willing to pay it to prevent the next atrocity. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Species argued about cost, about sovereignty, about the danger of creating a military force answerable to the Council. Some species loved the idea. Others hated it. Most were somewhere in between, seeing both the need and the risk. In the end, they voted. 41 species voted to establish the Rapid Response Force. 18 voted against it. 14 abstained. It was enough. There will be conditions, Yelthar said. Strict oversight, clear rules of engagement, limits on what weapons can be used. And humanity will not command this force alone. Agreed, Chen said. We do not want to command it alone.